Greetings and welcome to the Spring Symposium 2022, Fill the Well, Essential Healing and Education. I hope you all enjoyed We King's video filmed on location in Oakland, California at the Black Joy Parade a few weekends ago. Please support Kingmakers by downloading the Black Joy album, available on all digital platforms. Going to my next slide. At this point, I'd like our two MCs for today to introduce themselves. King Jonathan.
Peace, good people. My name is Jonathan Piper II, East Oakland, California National Street Team Ambassador, here to educate and support in the work and make sure that the young kings, queens, and non-binary feel supported and loved and that they have everything they need for a healthy environment. So thank y'all for being here to learn yourselves and to be vulnerable and to be in the work and to be in the space. We need y'all, we love y'all, and we hope you'll have an amazing time. To my co-host, the indomitable Chris Chatmon, please introduce yourself.
Right on, King. So honored to share space with Jonathan Piper, not the first, but the second. There we go. Future mayor, future governor, future president, an extraordinary curator of our culture. We'll be curating today as the MCs. I am the co-founder and CEO of Kingmakers of Oakland and honored to be in space with you all today. And we have an amazing program for you today, tomorrow, and Saturday. So we'll continue to move forward. King Jonathan. Uh-oh, a little delay in my slides. Oops, there we go.
Yes, sir. So one of the lyrics in our songs is that we are seeds and we are growing, right? And seeds, we grow and we continue to go up, but we also have to remember that we are deeply rooted. And so with us being deeply rooted, we have to acknowledge the land that we are on, the people and the tribes and the energy that we are riffing off of. And so we have this slide here for our land acknowledgement, and I have a special announcement I want to provide with it. That as a community, we recognize the ever-present systemic inequities that stem directly from past wrongdoings. We commit ourselves to respecting and reconciling these inequities by actively and diligently working to heal together and to create a world that works for everyone. We give thanks for all who came before us and endeavor to bequeath an equitable society as part of our legacy of love. So that is to go along with our land acknowledgement as we recognize the Ohlone land that we are on and how we must appreciate and give thanks to those who came before us, because this work did not just start with us. It started with our ancestors, and we carry that on through ancestral intelligence and just through the work that we're doing. This is legacy work. And so I appreciate us for having this moment to acknowledge the land and ask Baba C to go to the next slide.
Thank you. And in the spirit of legacy, y'all, we know that we stand tall because we stand on the shoulders of so many that came before us. And one of the things that's very important as we address this toxic ecosystem, and we'll go deeper in that a little bit later, really is the cures in the culture. And if we don't practice the daily rituals and routines of acknowledging the sacred land and acknowledging our ancestors, our foremothers and forefathers that dealt with far more with far less, then we're merely perpetuating the same frequency, the same cadence, the same routines and rituals that don't allow us to tap into our AI, not our artificial intelligence, but our ancestral intelligence. And so today, in moving forward and curating the space for us to really tap into our collective genius, we want to give a moment for each of you and all of you to acknowledge folks in the past, those sheroes, those heroes, those freedom fighters, those family members that are no longer here in this physical space. In the chat, if we can just take a moment in the spirit of a libation and recognize those folks who are no longer with us. And then King Jonathan will lift up a few of those names. And when he says the name, then to yourself or collectively we'll say ashe is an acknowledgement of that person, and so it is. And so if everyone could just go ahead and put acknowledge folks in the past in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. And as you're doing that, I'll share two more quotes before Jonathan lifts up some of the names in the chat. There is a difference between being in a position of power and being in a position of responsibility. Elders in traditional communities do not take power, they take responsibility and empower others. Jonathan, would you like to see if there's any names in the chat and lift them up, please?
Oh, sir, we got plenty of names in the chat by this time. We have Sarah Mae Jenkins, Ashe, Malcolm X, Ashe, Ronell McGraw,
Ashe,
Tyrone Kennedy,
Ashe,
King Billy Jenkins,
Ashe,
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.,
Ashe,
Dr. Maya Angelou,
Ashe,
Emmett Till,
Ashe,
Safa,
Ashe,
Harriet Shoecraft,
Ashe,
Melville Alexander Bromley Fleming,
Ashe,
Mary Jenkins, Maxine Poole,
Ashe,
King Clarence Gordine,
Ashe,
Gary Jordan,
Ashe,
Tupac Shakur,
Ashe,
Nellie Jackson,
Ashe,
Harriet Tubman.
Ashe,
I will conclude with bell hooks.
Ashe.
Respect and peace and love to all of those uplifted, especially those who have come before us. I see Toni Morrison out there. I'm reading through them though. Jean Wing, of course, and we'll get to acknowledging her and her life as well. And we will now go into who we are and appreciate all of you for sharing in the chat.
King Jonathan, you have this slide.
Wonderful. Who we are Kingmakers of Oakland. We are a social enterprise born out of Oakland Unified School District's Office of African American Male Achievement, AAMA. Kingmakers of Oakland is committed to transforming education systems and building the capacity of people to design and implement conditions and culture to improve educational and life outcomes for Black students. So we believe our educational transformation is possible. So making progress on equity requires us to have honest conversations about race and systemic oppression, not to lay blame, but to design more equitable systems. And so we know that the education system got some flaws, got some areas that isn't always hitting it where we got to be at, right? But we definitely know that when we put forth effort to changing it and calling out what's going on, it will change. And so appreciate all of y'all who've acknowledged that there's need for change and are here to receive more on how you can better yourself, but also make that change happen.
Thank you, King Jonathan. Want to acknowledge, if you don't stand for something, you'll go for anything. And Kingmakers of Oakland stands on 5 core foundational values. Love. Our approach is first and foremost rooted in love. Love of self, community, culture, and much, much more. African-centeredness. Understanding and being connected to our history and her story, community, humanity, and soul is key in shaping a positive Black identity, especially within an academic context. Collective will. The Calvary's not coming to save any of us. As members and allies of the Black community, we have a responsibility to co-create change. Partnership, and there's power in partnership. This work does not scale or grow without partners, and we are committed to equipping them for their journey. And our foundational value is we are modeling here today with the co-facilitation of one of our our foundational kings, King Jonathan, king-centeredness. Black boys will always be the co-creators of this work. Their voices are valued as much as the adults. And Jonathan, I'm not sure who had this one, but I'll just go ahead and read it just in the spirit of where we're at. There's a couple of things that we operate from, some assumptions in the spirit of healing the fish while treating the toxic ecosystem. Our educational system was not created to educate all children equally and to high standards, and therefore results in inequity by design. The policies, practices, and cultural representations or ways of knowing and communicating what is normal, right, and valued in schools advantages some groups of students and disadvantages other students.
So that gets us to why we are here today. What is the Spring Symposium? So our Fall Forum and Spring Symposiums are biannual convenings, bringing together school community and district leaders nationwide. The 3-day event has in the past brought people together to provide a deeper understanding of Kingmaker's approach of excelling Black male achievement and how educators engage, encourage, and empower the next generation of leaders and change makers to reimagine and redesign how public school districts create the systems, structures, conditions, and culture that lead to sustained educational and life outcomes for Black students. So,
oh, go for it, Jonathan.
all you.
All right, right on. Kingmakers of Oakland, as Kingmakers of Oakland, this is our 7th symposium. This symposium will focus on filling the well, essential healing and education. It will all be virtual. It'll run from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Thursday and Friday. And then on Saturday, King Jonathan.
On Saturday, we have the Artistic Minds in Tech, which is the lab 4, our 4th lab, curated in partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools, Google.org, the Kapoor Center, Kingmakers of Oakland, ourselves. We have the lab, which is going to be highlighting ways that youth can be engaged with their artistic talents and put that in the educational space. We're going to be featuring special artists, but we're also going to be covering topics such as NFTs, cryptocurrency, I want to say audio engineering, and things along those lines to support with how youth are engaging and using these new metrics that are really generating money and generating fame now. How are they using that in their spaces of education for creativity purposes to support their future? So please feel free to join us. There is registration available. It is a free event. It is for BIPOC youth. It's made for youth, curated by youth. But we do want the community to really receive all of this information.
And then our hashtag, social media.
Yes, yes. So all social media platforms, you can find us at Kingmakers of Oakland. On Twitter, we are Kingmakers O. And please, if you take any photos or if you have anything that is related to the symposium and you'd like to post that, please hashtag us at hashtag SS2022. That's SS2022, Spring Symposium.
Thank you. At this point, y'all, I'm going to take us to the event page just to pay particular attention to a couple of resources for you all before we get into some more of the meat of the program. Bear with me one moment as I then go back and share screen. So you all have access to the event page. There's a video of Jonathan so eloquently and beautifully describing the Spring Symposium and the lab. You have the flyers with the information regarding today. You have a schedule of day 1, day 2 in the lab. That's all you can click through at your leisure with information about all of the workshops that we'll be doing today. Jam boards are more informal this time around, and you'll have the opportunity actually to have some reflections that we can carry forward. And so you can click on that while we're in conversation or while the panel conversations are going. So please reference those live links: panel of health professionals, fireside chat with Dr. Brent Jones, and then day 2, the classroom observations and youth voice interviews. So you have the opportunity to look at the observation protocol and then click into hear some of the youth voice interviews. You have access to all of the extraordinary dynamic people that make up Kingmakers of Oakland organization, as well as some of the dope presenters that'll be sharing information with us today, tomorrow as well. Then what will be very important at the end of the day, and we'll give folks about 10 minutes before we close out, is to click on the eval survey. So this is really important for us, for everybody, as you go through today and you're getting all this wonderful information, to give us some real-time feedback, because then our facilitators and MCs for tomorrow, Khalil Chatmon and Akira Davis, two dope, extraordinary young leaders on our National Street team, will take some of that feedback, and we may even make some changes to the schedule, but we want to make sure that we are ideating based on feedback that you all give. But we can't do that if folks don't fill out the survey. So please make sure that you do that. You can download more information about our Learning Collaborative and our products and services. Otherwise, there's just a little bit more information provided for all of you, as well as the wonderful video that we opened up. I want to thank Brother Rock and Ram and Damari, our video production team, and Brother Judd, who created and curated the video, along with Color Queen Kava and team, who did the dope We Kings video. So that's actually on the event site, so you all can check that out. You can also sign up to be on our mailing list. Also want to acknowledge our extraordinary funders. We don't get here without resource, y'all. And so I'm not going to acknowledge all the funders at this point, but there's an eclectic, dope, diverse of local, regional, and national funders that have invested in Kingmakers of Oakland to allow us really to manifest our dreams, mission, vision, and values. So check us out. You'll see some of our district partners in here, some of our collaborative partners. We do not do this work in isolation of local, regional, and national partners as well. You all have access to that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click back off. Bear with me one moment before we go to the...
Yes, sir. And before we move forward, if I can just get a feel of who's in the room. I saw some amazing facial expression conversations happening somewhere around bro Anthony's screen. But in the spirit of knowing who's who, let us know in the chat or put up in some reactions if this is your first time at a spring symposium. So if you're able to, I know a lot of us do have our cameras off, but if you are able to, and this is your first one, put up a emoji or something. Okay, I don't see any. So this is your second time at the Spring Symposium. I heard we've had, what, 7 of them? Is that what I heard, Baba C? So there's been 7 of them. Let's see how many of y'all have been here before. We got, go ahead and drop that in the chat. Let us know where you're from and how many Spring Symposiums you've been to.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. And before I jump into the theory of action, I'm just going to do a high overview, kind of in framing our theory of action. What you put in today is what you get out of it, y'all. So I know some folks are in the world of multitasking. I just really want to encourage you, as much as we can capture your undivided attention. It really will help you understand the complexity of which we move, of this idea of healing the fish while treating this toxic ecosystem. And so I'm going to do about a 10-minute overview of our theory of action. But it's good to know who's here, what role you play. You'll have an opportunity after this as well to do a little meet and greet. So bear with me and appreciate all of you just being present and attentive as we move forward in this next piece. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and move forward in our Kingmakers of Oakland theory of action, which really is targeted and focused on this concept that John Powell created called targeted universalism. Targeted universalism is a frame for designing policy that acknowledges our common goals while also addressing the sharp contrast in access to opportunity between differently situated subgroups, barriers to quality education, well-paying work, fair mortgages, and so forth. To transform structural inequity into structural opportunity, Policies need to address these contrasts and measure success based on outcomes. And so we have developed and codified through 10 years of empirical data, longitudinal study, of ideating and prototyping within a system, Oakland Unified School District, to come up with this theory of action that centers Black boys, but serves the entire ecology of all students. And so what I'd like to do is share with you at a very high level the framing of how we do that. And I'm saying to myself, next slide, as there's a little delay. Bear with me. Oops. So the first step in partnering with school districts, although many districts want to go right in with an a la carte, but we're not going to just program our way out of this. We're not just going to singularly change policy. We have to inoculate Black boys while simultaneously addressing this toxic ecosystem that we call the public school system. And it's no shade to the people in it. We all are well-intended and trying to do the best that we can. But by design, the system, structure, condition, and culture has created a system that actually we can predict educational outcomes of Black, brown, and indigenous youth. And to solve for that, the theory of action that we use is targeted universalism, and the way is identifying a cross-functional, intergenerational team. This team is foundational because they ultimately will write the sheet music that will be the plan for that district from the classroom to the boardroom that addresses that toxic ecology. And that's not overnight. Big ships make slow turns. So it's important to know, though, at the core, that we have to have students at the decision-making table, family members, teacher, school leader, district leader, city official, community members. So that team we work with to help them build out this plan, predicated on 6 core drivers, which I'll get to in a minute. But the frame that I've referenced around healing the fish while treating the toxic ecosystem, we use this schematic as a way to help people think about, in what ways is my system toxic? And the national data, the regional data, the local data, doesn't matter if you're charter, private, or mainstream public school. What we have seen is school culture and conditions prevent African-American males from achieving. Disproportionality is not just unique to urban schools, suburban schools, also to charter schools and private schools. But we are disproportionately suspending Black boys from preschool through 12th grade, and that has to stop. We have to also, while we're addressing the disproportionality of suspension, as well as referral to special education with emotional disturbance classifications, we have to address not only the policy, but the practice. Because what we realized in the work as we were codifying these strategies within Oakland, and now we're seeing in other districts, is that engaged instruction is the #1 way to reduce in-class referrals and suspension rates. And so I'll talk a little bit later around how we work with teachers to support engaged instruction, but we also have to deal with the ether, which also gets into the overwhelming teacher population is not equipped to engage, encourage, and empower our kings based on how they've been taught and the systems that they've come up in and out of. And so our goal is to be best in class with teacher certification and credentialing. And we have an extraordinary team composed of Brother Bayon, Dr. Maurice Dolberry, Brother K.O., Kendrick Wilson, and Sean Foster, and Jerome Gordine, and others, Sister Uma, and Sister Kava, and Dr. Rochelle Rogers R., that are working with our teachers to support them with culturally responsive pedagogy, to ensure that there is engaged instruction from the moment our kings are in those classrooms. Biased curriculum, one of the most heaviest lift in these systems is the Eurocentric curriculum, excuse me, and the whiteness in math, science, language arts, and social studies. Our goal is to build out Kingmakers of Oakland to be best in class and a clearinghouse for African-centered curriculum, preschool through 12th grade in math, science, language arts, and social studies. That is important. And we can't just one class it or just have an ethnic studies class. It has to be an overhaul of the entire ecology of the content and curriculum, though that not just Black children are accessing, but all children are accessing, because the global economy are folks of color. And no one's going to be prepared if they don't understand the contributions of folks throughout the African diaspora, through Rasa studies, as well as indigenous contributions. And so that's a really big, heavy lift, but that's the journey of our work. Lastly, is the discrimination and criminalization from negative media portrayal. We have to stop let television telling our vision, y'all. So we are doing some of the most dopest, deepest work around video production and changing the narrative around the beauty and genius of Black children, Black families, Black community through film, through music. I want to acknowledge the extraordinary artists that we have, that all of these folks, not one in isolation, but collectively, we are helping districts write the sheet music that then, when sustained, takes that toxic ecology and creates it to a thriving community where youth voice and youth leadership is at the forefront, where engaged instruction is how we approach from pre-K to 12th grade all of our teachers and students, culturally relevant curriculum and a positive narrative. And so this framing, very high level, but that's how we nest the work through a liberatory design process. I'm in the home stretch, so bear with me. These 6 drivers, these are 6 core areas where we go deep and we go broad, and we have content experts, some of the nation's leaders in these 6 areas, that we work with the district teams around culturally relevant curriculum and pedagogy, around recruiting, training, and retaining Black male teachers, around elevating youth voice, not tokenizing, but elevating youth voice from the classroom to the boardroom, from PTA meetings to school site council meetings to state superintendent to the United States Department of Ed. We are working to elevate the voices of our kings in all of these spaces. How do we begin? Our 4th driver, to see the assets within the Black community, as opposed to seeing it from a negative standpoint, being able to be in right relationship to access the extraordinary genius and cultural prosperity of what has been in our community, and co-create a way where we're not working in isolation, but we're working in unison from a full service community school standpoint. The narrative change piece, as I talked about before, whoever controls the narrative ultimately has the power. And public school communication departments do 2 things well: crisis communication and reactionary communication. And we have to move from the problem of practice to the promise of practice. And Kingmakers of Oakland works with district communication teams to help lift up the differentiated way that we do that. And ultimately, policy, our way into policy is really through a youth participatory action research model where we work with our young people who actually are curating, elevating, and conducting listening campaigns, and then working with adults to co-design what that policy is based on their leadership as a way to then bind and codify this extraordinary work for generations to come. When this work is sustained, we have seen 62% reduction in suspension rates. We've seen the impact in the ecology of incarceration with a 40% reduction in incarceration rates for Black males. We've seen the cohort graduation rate for Black boys increase by 25%, and the dropout rate for Black boys reduced by 29%. With our targeted strategy around recruiting, training, and retaining Black male teachers, we've been able to double the amount of African-American male teachers and retain them by 92%. Extraordinary data, but again, big ships make slow turns, and you're not gonna do this in 1 year or 3 years. Really, this is legacy work.